Today, I want to get to our guests now. I'm excited to welcome back Tiffany Hines, the president and CEO of Global Escapes, and Jamie Jones, the CEO of WhirlAway Travel, for a continuation of discussion on how travel advisors can start implementing service fees in their agencies. Tiffany and Jamie were guests a way back on this series, and we had a lot of engagement, a ton of positive comments from that first session we did with them. And again, that video, for anyone who missed it, is hosted on our YouTube page and our training tab. So if you want to check that out, you can. But today we're gonna tackle it again, and I'm very excited to welcome back Jamie and Tiffany. I want to say thank you for coming back, especially for a second session.
Absolutely.
Yep, absolutely.
So I know we covered a ton of stuff in the first session. We covered sort of the mindset you got to be in to start charging fees. A lot of some sort of practical questions from people, but I want to get into some other stuff today because I know it's a big topic, especially now in the pandemic when people seem to want to start changing business models. So Jamie, I want to start with you. I had a lot of questions come to me before this session during this week about fee structures and fee schedules, but I know that's maybe not something you think is the most important factor when deciding to make the switch to fees. You and Tiffany both this week when we touched base spoke about the process, and I'm wondering if you could talk to me about that. I mean, what do you mean about the process for charging fees, and why is that important for advisors to know about?
Absolutely. So I'm going to give a little shout out to Dr. Bob Jocelyn. He's going to be in the Maestro series coming up talking about fees. And I met Bob when I was in TAMS and learned so much from him. So definitely sign up for that because I think that he's going to just keep adding to the wealth. So the first thing I want to say is, like, think about when you're working with another type of service professional, whether it be a lawyer or a contractor, whatever that is. When you start working with that person, you have to go through basically a process of initial inquiry through, actually hiring them to work on the project that you need them to work for. When you really think about it, I mean, our clients can purchase a celebrity cruise or a trip to Italy from anybody. They can purchase it from another travel advisor. They can purchase it online. They can purchase it direct. And what we really need to think about is why people want to work with us. So that's when I bring out the process. And if you have a very clear process of how you do business with every single client, it becomes basically the way that you do business and the way that you bring somebody through from initial inquiry to actually being your client. So what I would like to do, and they call this in TAMS a pens up moment. So take notes because I'm going to do really high level with what our process is. And hopefully it will help some people just understand that, this is how I get a client and how I feed them into my system. So initial inquiry, somebody calls and says, I want to, plan a trip. So the first thing that I do is gather information. So I want to get their name, their phone number, their email address, their contact information. If I can get their address, great. If I can get the other travelers, that's wonderful. So there's two reasons that I do this. One is that it sets the tone that if they're not going to give me that information, then I don't really want to commit to the time to doing a full consult with them because, it's kind of a give and take and they have to commit something to me from the beginning. It also gives me the opportunity that after I do my initial consult, I have all the information that I need to continue to follow up with them in many forms, not just email, not just phone, but I can call them, I can email them, I might be able to put a note in the mail for them. So there's a little bit of customer service and sales process in that as well. And then I set the appointment for the initial inquiry. And this is really important because it sets the tone of who is in charge of that initial inquiry and who is in charge of that consultation. So we set an appointment. It might be later that day. It might be, immediately. It's just, let's set an appointment and move on from there. And I let them know that, my appointments last anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour and a half, just depending on how in depth we get and the type of travel that it is. Once we have an appointment, I ask them during that consult, I ask them a ton of questions, not just about who's going, where do they want to go, and when do they want to go. I want to know why they want to go. I want to know about their other travel experiences. I ask questions on questions on questions to really understand what type of traveler they are. And this does a couple things. It gives me the information to be able to create a trip for them if they decide to proceed with me, but it also makes them think, huh, she's really asking questions that I never thought needed to be answered. And it gives them pause to think how capable they are of planning a trip on their own instead of hiring a professional. So after I answer all my questions, I use the information that I got from those questions to paint a general picture of the type of travel that I can provide for them, that I can plan for them. And then I present how I work. And I go over, this is how I work, this is what I require up front. The next step is that I'm going to send you a service agreement for you to review and sign. It's going to have the scope of what we talked about and what you're looking for and what my fee is to plan this trip. And I require an upfront deposit of X. And I say, would you like to hire me? And so 9 times out of 10, they say yes. And sometimes they say, I have to think about it. But I always send that service agreement with the scope of the work with my fee. And then from that point, you know, I give them a day or two to complete it. And if they don't, then I utilize the information that I got from that initial inquiry to continue to follow up with them to see if they would like to proceed. Sometimes it takes quite a few. I had one, a gentleman that reached out to me about a month and a half ago, and he wanted to plan a trip, went through everything, and I didn't get anything back from him. So I continued to reach out to him, and he just contacted me 2 days ago, and he said, we're finally ready to proceed. I'm so sorry it's taken me so long. I hope that we can still do this. How do I get your fee to you if I don't want to pay by credit card? So that's the process. If a client does not go to the next step in my process, then I will continue to put them on my mailing list or send out note cards to them, but I don't do any trip planning. I don't do any research. I don't get prices. I don't do any of that until they actually commit to working with me.
Okay, I mean, Tiffany, if you want to jump in here, you can too, but I'm wondering, because we're already getting questions in the chat about this, that process is for a lot of these, you're getting introduced to a new client and you're describing to them how the process works. What about, we have a lot of advisors I can see already in the chat who are saying, I don't charge fees, I have a list of clients already. What about the process for those new clients, for those old clients who might not be used to you charging a fee? What is the process like for introducing that fee to old clients, and what kind of hiccups can you have, and how can you deal with those kind of hiccups?
I'll jump in on this because this was a huge issue when I was taking over the leadership of our company from my mother, God bless her, that started our company in 1988. And, you know, one of the things that I think is really important is you have to, I mean, at the end of the day, we are salespeople, and you have to constantly be reminding the clients that you work with the things that you do for them and why they continue to call you. But from kind of a higher level than even, you know, Jamie just provided a lot of information of her process, her intake process, like you said, for new clients. But I think even before you get to that point, you really need to kind of decide what type of clients you want to work with. I mean, we all know that people have computers at their fingertips. They can do a lot of these things on their own. But when people take the time to either email or call you, they are really, they're struggling. They have a problem that they need you to help solve, or either they're looking for that personal connection or the human touch. And I think that's really important to remember in this process. And I think that is a lot of the fear that people have about charging fees for their services, is they haven't built up the confidence of that they're so worth what they would charge. But as far as going back to the question about existing clients, I mean, that was a step that we really had to take a look at. You know, we had a lot of great clients that we had worked with for a number of years. But what we found when we started charging fees and we started introducing our fee structure to some of our existing clientele, they didn't understand it. They didn't get the value that we were adding. And while I will admit in the early days, we probably didn't do the best job of articulating that, and it did take a lot of practice. So I just want to remind everybody listening today, this process takes time, and it is a process that you have to work through, and it requires a lot of practice. But we got to a point where we just decided the people who agreed to pay our fee understood the value that we were bringing to the process, And we had to be okay with losing a certain percentage of our older clients. And that's just complete honesty. I mean, you just have to be prepared that when, and you just think about this, anytime a business changes their business model or their structure, there is the potential that you are going to lose some of your customers, and you've got to be okay with that. But what I need for everybody to focus on is the increased revenue that you're going to get from the people who are going to be completely fine with paying a fee, and your new business model is probably going to far outweigh any amount of business that you're going to lose. And you have to have the confidence. You just have to have that confidence in it.
How do you, I mean, you spoke about articulating the value, but do you have any advice on articulating that value to your clients, or any advice on having that conversation, particularly telling them, explaining to them why you're worth the fee? Jamie, I saw you nodding your head on that one.
Yeah, so we've actually done this in, our team has done this quite a few times, where we really list out all of the things that we do for our clients, what value we can bring to the table. And if you have, you know, if you work on that personally and say, this is from the beginning of planning a trip all the way to the end, what are the things that I do? And this is why, you know, I'm really against sharing fee schedules, because what we do is very, you know, everybody does something differently or offers different values. But if you understand all of the things that you can do, you can really, you get to the point where when you're selling yourself and when you're selling your service and when you're presenting, this is how I work and this is what I will do for you and this is the added value that I'm going to bring to you, you can very easily convey what you're bringing to the table and why they should hire you.
And then just quickly, Jamie, we had a question come in from Lynn about your first answer that I missed, but I do want to just ask it. She wants to know, do you ask if they want to hire you before you send your service agreement or after?
I ask if they would like to hire me before I send the service agreement, because if it's a flat out no, I'm not paying a fee, I don't want to spend the extra time to put together that that scope of work, because that, you know, it takes 10 minutes. But that's 10 minutes I could be spending on somebody else. But I will keep her information and follow up. And we've had, you know, I've had instances where we've had a client that said, absolutely no, I'm not paying a fee. This is ridiculous. And we've kept in contact with them, and then they've come back and now they're booking all their travel through us, because they might know somebody who's used us and that person is saying, oh, they're 100% worth every penny that they charge and more. So you don't ever want to totally throw somebody out, but, you know, keep them on the back burner.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think both of you have sort of made that point in both of these sessions, and that it's important to remember that you are providing a huge amount of value to your clients, even if sometimes it might be, you might feel shy or you might feel unwilling to sort of communicate that. I think that's important. Tiffany, earlier in the week, again, we touched base and you mentioned something that you thought was important, especially as we had this kind of conversation, was that recently here in the U.S., ASA had the rebrand. I think it was maybe last year, and they switched from the American Society of Travel Agents to Advisors. And you mentioned that was sort of part of doing the deep dive into your value and figuring out what kind of value you add to your clients. Why did you think that was so important to make the switch from, even that's just terminology, from agent to advisor?
Well, I think it's important because, you know, for any of us that's been in the industry for more than 20 years or so, you know, there was a time frame when we may have worked more as a booking agent. You know, you had clients call you up, they kind of knew what they wanted to do, and you took care of booking all of the details. While you may have added additional recommendations or things to that booking process, in large part, I think that is, you know, that was what the process was. I think as we've evolved over the years, since the days of, you know, airline commission cuts and these kind of things, we have taken a lot of deep dives into what are all the hurdles that people face when they travel and how can we eliminate those hurdles? You know, what I think, you know, for me and for our company, we really wanted to dive into how can we remain relevant? What can we do? One of the things that I've said a lot in my office is, you know, that think about the cell phone. And for those of you a little bit older like me, who have lived in a world pre-cell phone, you know, you manage to get through life without a cell phone, whereas nowadays everybody has one in their hand and they can't live without it. And so what I've always said is, how do we become as relevant to our clients as the cell phone they're carrying around in their hands? You know, we really want to make sure that we are looking after every detail. And so for our company, it's really important for us, when we do the initial consultation, like Jamie referenced, we really want to get to know our clients. We are in this for the long haul. If they're going to take the time to share personal information about themselves, their travel companions, the type of travel that they like to do, why would we want to waste that on one transaction? We really want them to think of us as their travel advisor for the rest of their travel days. So we kind of go into the relationship in that way. And I think it's important, you know, for anybody who is not currently charging fees, they really need to think about themselves and, you know, are you doing enough to add value to the client to warrant a fee? I think that really precedes, you know, the first question Jamie and I always get is, can you share your fee structure? You really, there's a lot that comes before creating a fee structure, because the hardest part of all of this is the conversations that you're going to have with either new prospects or existing clients. And you've got to have the meat and of the conversation to be able to back up what you're charging for. You've got to feel confident in that. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, oh, go ahead, Jamie.
I'm like seeing the chats pop up, and I just wanted to address something really quick.
Okay.
Because a lot of people are asking if they recommend sending a letter out to clients.
That was one of the questions we got beforehand too.
And I think Tiffany and I are both in big agreement on this, is that absolutely not. Are you, like, how would you feel if you got a letter from your hairdresser out of the blue that said, my business is changing a little bit and my services are going to increase by X amount of money? Are you going to, like, you have to be able to talk to people and personalize it. And I totally do not recommend sending a letter out. I don't recommend listing your values, because again, you want to make sure that the values that you're bringing to the table are going to be a good fit for the specific client. So something that you might value is something that they might not need on that specific trip. And they're going to say, well, I don't need that. So why are you charging me a fee for it? So I just wanted to address that really quickly. Sorry for jumping in.
That is funny, because I got that email from my barber during COVID, is that we're going to start. And it did feel a little cold, like, you know, because I was, especially someone you have a relationship with, it feels a little cold when you get that mass market email, especially when you have other contact information you can use. So I think that is a smart point. That is one of the questions we got a few times. How do I have this conversation with my clients? Like, what medium to use? So what would your recommendations be? Would it be just to have the conversation when the inquiry comes in, when the email or the phone call comes in and says, hey, I want to book travel? You just go, oh, great. Just so you know, I have a new fee. Is that what you would do?
Yes. So if I have a client that, say they haven't booked with me in 2 years, and I didn't charge a fee 2 years ago, they call, oh, it's so great to hear from you. I hope you've been well. I try to personalize it, like connect with them right away. And they say, well, we want to do this. Okay, well, let's set up a time to really talk about this. I have some more questions. I want to go over, we've changed a little bit about the way that we work. I think that you're going to love, how we work now. And so let's set that time up. Great. We have that consultation. I go through the same consultation. Have you traveled anywhere since we last talked? Anything changed in life? Like, ask those questions. Don't just jump to the trip. Find out more about them as people, and then say, okay, great. This is how we've changed a little bit. And I know that you've valued working with me in the past. We're offering a little bit more now, or we're offering the same, or they're enhanced, however you're doing your services. As Tiffany mentioned in the last one, if you're simply just clicking and booking, it's not for you. But if you're really truly advising with clients, then you absolutely can charge something, and then present it to them that way, so that they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. You have to personalize everything that you do. but still stick to your process. If you can stick to your process and put a personal touch on it, people are hiring you to plan their travel. The travel aspect is a product. You are the face, you're the one that they're going to be calling when things go wrong or they have issues or questions. So they're hiring you for that service.
Something both of you, I think, touched on the first session too was remembering that, you know, your compensation is a powerful thing for your compensation to come from your client rather than the supplier too, because who are you more beholden to at the end of the day? Is it your client or is it your supplier? So I think that's and also a great point, and it's important to remember. So we have about 25 minutes left. Please use the chat. I know the chat is going is going pretty quickly right now. I'm going to try to grab as many questions as possible. But I know there was a lot of questions that came in before ahead of the time, and I want to get to some of them now because some of them were really good and touched upon some stuff maybe we didn't cover in the first session. So this one was interesting. Ann Hines, she asked, if I decide to implement trip planning fees, how do I handle the client that contacts you off hours or on the weekend? She says, of course, she handles emergencies, but otherwise she likes to have some kind of boundaries. Having a fee, she says, feels as though they owe me and then I must work 24/7. How would you sort of approach that, or what advice would you give to her?
Do you pay a CPA? Do you pay an accountant? Do you pay an attorney? And do you feel like you own them and that they can work for you anytime, day or night? Now, real estate agents may work a little differently, and they do tend to kind of 24/7 it. But no, I think that's up to each individual advisor to establish their boundaries. And I think that's just being human. I mean, people expect that we all have to have a personal life. But, you know, again, coming out of COVID, one of the things that we've stressed a lot in our office is while we were really, really busy in January and February, we're not so much right now. So we do need to be stepping up and, you know, pulling in the business that we can so that we can continue to get things moving again. And so we may, you know, we may work in some off hours to try and reel in business and try to instill a little bit of consumer confidence in getting back out there. But no, I think it's not an unreasonable thing for you to have boundaries and off time. So.
Yeah, and Jamie, just before we went live today too, you mentioned that you've been super busy, and I know you don't do anything without a fee, and that people are shy to lose business without a fee. But you've actually, you told me business is going pretty well right now, even with your fee-based model.
It has, and it's actually, you know, existing clients, but also quite a few new clients. I think the past maybe 3 or 4 consults that I've had have been with new clients, and it's, you know, they don't bat an eye. There's no question about it. And some of them are referrals and some of them are not. And, you know, the referrals are a little bit easier because there's already a tone set about how I work. But the new ones, I mean, it's just about the confidence, and there's no apology about my fee or the way that I work. It is what it is. You want to work with me, you pay.
Can I jump in real quick?
Yes,
It's a persona. Please. It's really a persona that you create. And it's amazing when you can kind of create a persona of being in demand and being worth what you are confidently articulating to that prospect or existing client. While they may seem, you know, perplexed or may need some time to think about it initially, what you're leaving them with is, I'm in high demand and I'm worth this. And so if you want to do business with me, this is how we're going to play this game. And so, you know, what's great about that is as you continue to create that persona, your clients become your best salespeople because they're out there telling their friends how amazing you are. And the other part of that is just, you know, the one thing we say a lot is it's quality over quantity. Mm-hmm. If people are just looking for the cheapest price and they're just trying to get something booked quickly, the internet is there for them. That's what the internet can really help with. If they're really interested in a quality experience, your time is the most valuable thing you have. And we always try to remind our clients and new prospects that you've got this week, this 2 weeks, whatever it is that you're looking to go away. Once that time is gone, you will never get it back. So let's make sure that we get it right the first time around.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think it comes down to you get what you pay for. It sounds like that. You know, you're getting an exceptional experience when you use an agent, and when an agent has a fee. I don't think it's anything to bat an eye at. So I know questions are coming in. It's very difficult for me to keep track of them, but one of them I caught here. Nadia, she wants to know, how would you suggest dealing with client objections? What were some common issues you ran into when you were beginning to charge fees to existing clients? And I'm actually wondering, I mean, when you get pushback, I mean, what are your philosophies with negotiating fees or a discount fees? Or is there any situation where you guys would even consider that? No.
I mean, to be honest with you, we're too busy, and I spend my time on people that value my service and value me. Once you get into a negotiation or trying to justify yourself, you're really, you kind of go into a downward spiral with that. It's really, I mean, I said this before, I said it last time, confidence is key, and you have to have that persona that you are worth every penny that you charge, and if they're not in line to pay it, somebody else is, and you will move on to the next person. Tiffany said it wonderful the other day when we were kind of having like our planning call, is that for the one person that doesn't want to pay your fee, there's going to be 10 people in line that will.
Right. Yeah.
Tiffany, you seem to agree. You seem to agree, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. I think, and we have over the years, we've had a lot of pushback, and we've had people who say, how can you expect me to pay for something before, I even see what you can do? Or, you've got to be okay with those people walking away. And as we've evolved, even in this planning of the professional fees element of what we do, it's interesting how we've even begun to notice in these initial consults with new people, we've begun to figure out the type of people that we don't think are going to be a good fit for our agency. And those folks typically are the ones that we've realized they are the ones that have always planned their trips, and they really enjoy the planning process. And what we say to those people is, we understand, because we are those people. That's why we do what we do for a career. But if they are so in control, and they love being in control and having all of that, they're going to constantly be going behind you. They're going to be questioning everything that you do, and you're never going to fully gain their trust. And those kind of folks are just not a good fit for us. Because what we've realized is we're constantly playing tug of war with them, and it's just a struggle. And there's just so much business out there that we don't need to go through that struggle. But at the same time, I think for those of us who have been in the industry a really long time, we have to remember to not get defensive. I can remember a time, 15 years ago, when if somebody called and they said they had been looking online or whatever, that people would get their feathers so ruffled. And we live in that world now. People are shopping everything and trying to find, the best price for everything. And so what you have to do is you've got to solidify the deal before you really start investing a lot of time in it. I mean, you've really got to, like Jamie said, they've got to hire you. They've got to commit to hiring you.
Yeah, we had a earlier guest on this series who spoke about knowing your ideal client and knowing your avatar for your client, and I think that's important. I mean, that wasn't even a session about fees, and I think it was about marketing, and I think that's just so important for you to know who your ideal client is, and to market and to tailor your business to that. We're getting a ton of questions about fee amounts. And I know last time we spoke, you guys mentioned that, it's not a one size fit all for agencies, but do you have any advice on how an advisor can start figuring out what their time is worth and how much money they want to charge? And I mean, even what they're leaving on the table by not charging a fee. I mean, do you have any advice on sort of figuring out what that number you want to start with is?
Yeah. I mean, there's tons of different ways to do it. You know, I think that you need to look at your, maybe what you brought in last year and divide that by the number of hours that you worked, and then look at how much you want to work and how much you want to make an hour, and start kind of backwards and figure out, you know, what you feel that your worth is an hour. I mean, that's really how we've done it. And we've gotten to the point where I know that, you know, a 7-day all-inclusive vacation is going to take X amount of time, and I need to make this much money on it. And this is why my fee is X for doing something like that. Because I know what my time is worth an hour. I know what my expenses are. You have to know your numbers. You're running a business. This is not for hobbyists. This is your business. You have to know what your expenses are. You need to know what you want your income to be. You have to know how it'll help you figure out how much business that you can lose. Because I would rather work with less people and be profitable and have a little bit less headache than just be churning business to chase every penny.
So again, if anyone has a question, please drop it in the chat. A lot of questions are coming in about stuff we covered in the last session. And again, if you want to go watch that, we dropped the link in earlier, and we'll drop it in again in a second. But one question that came in again that I do ask you guys to touch upon is that people want to know, what do you call your fee to your clients? Do you call it a service fee? Do you call it a planning fee, a professional fee? What do you think the best terminology is?
That's a big topic right now. So we call, you know, there are services, the services that we offer. We tried not to use the word fee as much as possible. It's really hard to get away from it completely. But you know, this is what we charge for our services, and depending on the scope of what you're looking to do, then, you know, once we have that conversation with that client and we really discuss and try and connect with them on a personal level and convince them that we are capable and can really add value to their trip, then, you know, the fee that we would assess for what you're looking to do would be X, and we'll need to collect that before we can get started. So, and kind of like Jamie, we use a service agreement, and we have them, you know, fill out all of that information so that once we start working on the trip, we don't have to backtrack and go get, you know, their passport information and all this other stuff. We try to collect everything we can up front, so that once we start working, we can continue to move forward and kind of work as efficiently as possible.
Yeah, and again, I don't think it's a one size fit all.
No.
Even the term, we're getting a lot in the chat. I see concierge fee, travel concierge fee, professional planning charges. I see a lot of people doing different stuff, and I think it's important to remember you have to figure out what's best to do for your business. Robin said she watched the first Zoom session, and since she had charged fees for 2 clients, 1 new client, 1 existing client, and she said neither had an issue paying fees. So I do think there's an opportunity here for everyone on this call to start charging fees. Allison added some more terms. She says design fee, travel planning fee, concierge fee. So I think it's important. I'm curious, I think this is sort of a relevant question now. Probably a couple months ago, it was even more relevant. But do either of you work with cancellation fees?
Yes, we do. So we do charge cancellation fees based on, you know, we always put the most, I guess, stringent fee policy on our invoices and in our terms and conditions. But as a small business, one of the beauties of it is that we have the ability to take each individual situation into consideration as to whether we fully enforce that particular cancellation fee. I think, you know, that is one of the benefits of having a small company and being able to evolve and adapt and change quickly, you know, especially during something like a pandemic. So we've really tried hard to do right by our clients. And for instance, what we decided as an office, as a team, for any of the COVID cancellations, that we do not refund any of our planning fees, but if they end up booking the exact same trip in the future, in the next year or two, we will not assess a new fee. even though it will require additional work for us to do that. But if any aspect of the original itinerary changes, there will be an assessment of something to that. And if the itinerary changes completely or the destination changes completely, then we're starting all over. And so we would have to assess a brand new fee. But I mean, again, it's people working with people. And for us, we want to be fair. We want to be compensated for our time. We want to feel valued. And, you know, what you'll find is as you begin to feel more valued by your client, it's going to make you want to work even harder for that client. It really is a win-win for everybody. And while the client may not realize that initially, they will. They will. If they continue to work with you, they will really get it, and they will be so glad.
Yeah, and again, I think we actually had a question during your answer. It says, Susan asks, some clients are aware that tour operators give commission, and how do we charge the service fees? But I think your answer just sort of covers that, is that, you know, who you beholden to, and I mean, what kind of experience do they want, and what kind of care do they want from their advisor? And I think that's important to remember. Two things I did want to just throw in myself, because we had some questions coming about it, was that a lot of people asked about seller of travel license. Do you need that to charge fees? We covered that at ASTA. Tiffany and I were on the same panel at ASTA, but I do want to mention that in the U.S., if you live in California, Florida, Washington, Delaware, Iowa, or Hawaii, collecting money for travel requires a seller of travel license that you must obtain before you'll be able to start charging fees. I know in California, the seller of travel license is about $300, and I'm not sure about the other 5 states, but that's fairly easy to get if you just do a quick Google. And a lot of people asked about payment systems for fees. What kind of tools do you use? And I know we covered PayPal, Square, Stripe. Those kind of apps can be good for it. I'm curious, do you use those, any of those apps or payment systems, or what? How do you guys collect your fees?
We have a merchant account through our bank. They're not the easiest to get these days as travel, but I actually was looking at changing it, and I think the big thing that I had to explain to the person that I was looking to change it to was, we're not charging for travel, we're charging for our services, and our clients sign an agreement, and they sign an authorization to pay our fee, which is non-refundable, which goes back to the process. So you have to just, you know, be mindful about how you present yourself, and then how you follow through with that as well.
Yeah, and I would piggyback on that and say we have actually switched merchant accounts in the midst of this COVID, and again, it's something that I see will continue to evolve in the travel industry, as you know, PayPal and a lot of these companies create the ways that you can send an invoice and that can be paid by the client online. I think that's going to become more and more the norm. But we've always just had our merchant account, and we've processed those ourselves. And it's fairly easy, and you know, but you do need to take into consideration the merchant, you know, the fees that you pay to process. And there's times if we are processing large chunks, if it's an added service we're doing for the client, we may add the 3 or 4% back to the charge to cover that to the client. But you know, again, we're always just trying to be fair, but we are a business, and we are not a nonprofit business. We are a for-profit business, and we want to be here in the long run to help our clients for a long, long time.
Yeah, and there's a ton of other apps coming in the chat about people who use different things to collect service fees. But again, I mean, the overall arching theme of maybe this whole session seems to be fair, to be flexible too. I think that's important to remember. So we have about 15 minutes left. Any questions, please? We have 15 minutes, and this is their second session. So any outstanding questions, please drop them in the chat. We'll get to them. But one thing I did want to ask, an interesting question that came in just before we started today from Joe Lang. It's again sort of about this community of travel advisors, and he says I'm most interested in knowing how we, as a collective of travel advisors, are going to plan, organize, structure, and implement service fees on a national basis so that we can be as consistent and uniform as possible. I know that's a big ask, and I know I got a lot of questions also about sort of, there's an advisor down the street who doesn't charge fees. What if I lose a client to them? But can you talk about, is that something you think is realistic to ever happen, is sort of a collective voice in the travel agency community making fees the norm throughout as a normal business practice? Do you think that's possible? And do you think there's any way to sort of push that to happen?
I mean, I would say look at where we are now versus where we were 9 months ago. I mean, we're having these conversations and people are actively like they're wanting to jump in. And I think that we have to continue to have these conversations about charging. You know, there might be a shift in the industry. One of the things that I learned, I think Tiffany might have touched on it with ASTA last time, and it's something that I learned from Bob Jocelyn, is that when travel agencies first came into existence, there was no commissions. Everything was fee-based. And so, you know, airlines cut commissions. And so people started charging fees for that. We've seen how many suppliers that have not paid us when they've said they're supposed to pay us, or that we've been at final payment and now we have to wait another 1.5 years to get paid by the suppliers, even though they're holding all of our clients' money for these clients to go on their next trip. I mean, I think that there's going to be a huge shift in our industry, and we as travel advisors have to push the suppliers as well. I mean, we have to push for this. We have to be confident in ourselves, and we have to hold ourselves to a higher standard.
Right. And I will say, you know, that one of the conversations as an ASTA board member, one of the conversations that has been the hot topic behind the scenes for ASTA, and they've worked really hard with suppliers to try and encourage them to pay commissions earlier, to get the money into the pockets of the travel agencies that they are due. But, you know, the reality of the situation is, for those agencies or advisors that are not charging fees, you've got 100% of your income is tied up in a supplier that you're not going to get paid until either final payment is made or until the trip happens. And I don't know many industries where businesses can stay afloat for 8 to 12 months with no revenue coming in. The business model just does not make sense. And when you have employees that you're paying and you've got, you know, all of your operating expenses, you have to have cash flow to cover those operating expenses. And so, you know, what we've really realized, you know, during COVID, and we, you know, to some extent knew this ahead of time, but 95 to 99% of our work is done when we hand our clients their travel documents. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we are always there for them when they need us as an advocate while they're traveling. We love to get their feedback when they get back from their trip. It's the perfect opportunity to get them excited about the next adventure. But for that particular experience, the majority of our work is done. We should be compensated by that time. I know that my company, one of the goals that we have is to work over the next 3 years to become 100% reliant on our fees, because this pandemic has really shown us that this business model is broken. It does not make sense.
And there have been good suppliers who have changed their policies, but again, I mean, you're being holding to the supplier seems to be a risky road to take, especially, you know, we saw what happened with the pandemic, and things can change pretty quickly. The hurricanes, pandemics, things change so quickly in 2020, especially. So that's a great point to make. I'm curious. So there's a lot of advisors here who, again, haven't charged fees. If you could give them one concrete step to take before the weekend's over, let's say, to get on the road to start charging fees, do you have any advice for them? Anything they can specifically do starting today that will start moving their business model into the fees? I know it's a process, but is there anything concrete thing that they can finally get on the road to that business model? Jamie, do you want to start with this one?
Sure. Get a pen and a piece of paper and write down everything that you do for your clients from the time that they first talk to you, from that first initial inquiry until the time that they get back. Everything that you do for them on their behalf. And when you see that list, it's going to blow your mind about all the work that you put into it besides clicking a button to book them on a trip.
Tiffany?
Well, and not only that, think about how emotionally tied as the advisor you get to your clients and their experiences. I mean, we all go through those moments when they reach out to us while they're traveling and your heart, you know, drops, or you get the sick feeling in the pit of your stomach about something has possibly gone wrong or whatever. I mean, we are all so emotionally connected to the experiences that we're planning for our clients. And you need to remind them of that. You need to let them know how much you care about their amazing experiences, because we all love what we do, and that's why we get so emotionally attached. But my one thing to piggyback on what Jamie said, I'll tell you what I did in 1995 when the airlines began to eliminate commissions. I went home and I added up how many airline tickets we issued that year. And I looked to see how much we made in the form of commissions and how much we would make if we charged a $5 fee per ticket, $10, $15, whatever. And that was when the light bulb really went off for me. So what I would suggest is before the end of this weekend, go back and look at how many itineraries you planned in 2019 and add up, you know, do just simple math. You know, what would you make if you charged a $50 per trip itinerary of fee, $100, $200, $300, and if that doesn't get you excited about the additional income that you're basically leaving on the table, I don't know what will.
Well, I want to thank both of you for for your time today and both a few weeks ago where you gave us another hour. I know you guys are getting busy, and I can't thank you enough for talking to me and for sharing your expertise with everybody here. So thank you so much. And hopefully down the road, maybe if things change, we'll have you back again. I know the comments are always positive when you two are on, so I just want to say thank you again, and I truly appreciate you two.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Glad to help.
It's a pleasure.
So we had a lot of questions about your first session. I'm going to drop the YouTube link in the chat right now. The first session, along with every other session we've done, is on there. I also want to remind everyone, an email will go out in about 15 to 20 minutes about next week, where we're going to have Dr. Evelyn Graver speaking about mental health. I hope you're back with us for that, and hope everyone out there has a great rest of your week and weekend, and hope to see you all again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.